Hello and welcome to Candidates Night 2015 from Bridgewater, Massachusetts. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gillis, along with my co-host,
Keith Buell. Welcome, Bridgewater.
Yes, we have three races that we are going to be highlighting this evening on BTV. We are broadcasting right now live on BTV, and this will be rebroadcast several times on BTV leading up to the election, and it should be available also at some point on the BTV website for those that want to watch it. The first segment that we are going to do this evening is for the Bridgewater-Raynham Regional School Committee, the candidates. Just to remind voters, we elect in Bridgewater representatives from both Bridgewater and Raynham, with 2 people from the Bridgewater side seeking election for 2 seats and 3 people from Raynham seeking election for 2 seats. We invited all 5 candidates to attend this evening. One was unable to attend, but we still have 4 of our candidates here this evening, and I'm really happy and hopeful to have a lively discussion with our candidates.
Before we get started, we do want to remind people, and we will a couple times through the night, the important dates. The election is Saturday, April 25th. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the middle school at Bridgewater. Also, for those who might be out of town, it is school vacation week ending up there. Absentee ballots are available right now at the town clerk's office, and all absentee ballots must be submitted by Friday, April 24th at noon. Again, we'll talk about those dates a lot as the night goes on so that everybody's aware of exactly when things are going to happen.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of a twist to a normal debate since the BR School Committee, and we will follow the same template when we get to the Bridgewater Library. We're going to have this as more of what would be a typical meeting for the BR School Committee. We're going to allocate about 20 minutes for the topic. The topic was shared with the 4 panelists beforehand. Essentially, what is the most important issues for the 2015-2016 upcoming school year. School committees get their power by a consensus. There are 8 members on the school committee, so as Keith and I were talking about formats, we thought this may be an interesting approach to allowing the 4 people to bring forward ideas, understand how they manage what would be essentially just like a meeting. Right before going on camera, we drew lots to determine drew cards to determine who was going to go in what order, and we'll go quickly through the list of the 4 individuals who are here, where they'll introduce themselves and start the discussion off after they introduce themselves with 1 or 2 issues that they believe are important. Once we go through the 4 candidates, we'll cycle back and everyone will get a chance to then expound and talk a little bit more about what issues we should be thinking about for 2015-2016. So our first individual is Mr. Tony Gelfi. Lewis, I believe he goes by the name Tony.
Yeah.
Tony Gelfi from Raynham. He is one of the 3 individuals running for the 2 seats in Raynham, if I have this correctly. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to welcome you and allow you to introduce yourself and start the ball rolling.
All right, I'm Tony Gelfi. I've lived in Raynham for about 10 years. I've served on the committee for 1 year. And right now my concerns is the budget. I mean, we just went through the process and it ties into everything else we do.
Okay, thank you. Next is Michael Dolan from Bridgewater. He's one of the 2 individuals running for the 2 seats in Bridgewater. Mr. Dolan, welcome.
My name's Mike Dolan. I live here in Bridgewater. I've lived here for about 5 years. I live here with my wife Nora and my 2 children, James, who's in kindergarten, and Evelyn, who's in preschool. So I'm in it for the long haul. Just starting out, and I think that is one of my biggest issues, is making sure that every child from the get-go we are preparing to move forward, whether it's kindergarten or 1st grade, or that senior going into college, or that senior going into a trade or the military, making sure that we're prepping our students appropriately for what lies ahead of them. So.
Okay, thank you. Next will be Jan from Raynham, one of the 3 individuals running for 2 seats in Raynham. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Boliano. I've lived in Raynham about a year and a half. I came out here because I love the resilience of the people here in Massachusetts. And I also want to say that what's really passionate to me right now is the fact that we have so many children being turned away from vocational schools, and that is what it has driven me to get on the school committee. I just want to be able to do my part. I'm a immigrant from Romania in 1977. Our family came here, and this is exciting for me to finally be part of the American system and do my part.
Okay, and next, Ms. Pat Riley, who is an incumbent seeking re-election and is seeking one of the 2 seats from Rainham.
Thank you, Joe. And first I want to thank Joe and Keith for hosting this, and BTV as well. A lifelong resident of Rainham, graduate of the Rainham Public Schools, Bridgewater Rainham Regional High School, and Bridgewater State College. I've served on the Regional School Committee for the past 9 years. My community involvement has included over 25 years of hosting local cable shows, as well as serving on the Rainham Historical Commission, the Rainham Cable Access Board, and for the past 18 years with the Rainham Association of Volunteers for Education, for the past 9 years as president, and 9 years prior to that as the volunteer coordinator. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
And what would be 1 or 2 issues that you would like to bring to the table for our discussion?
The budget is primary at this point. It's so important, and we have a very difficult budget year ahead of us.
Okay, thank you. Now to cycle back, now that we got a couple of the items on the table and probably have close to about 19 minutes left, and then to allow closing time for all of the candidates. So we'll open it up and try to go down the line just to make sure everyone gets a minute or 2 to speak, and then we'll keep circling back if people have some conflicting opinions, etc. So again, Mr. Tony Gelfi, and I forgot to say that you were an incumbent running.
That's all right.
So if you want to now, take a couple moments to expand on what you initially said, which I believe was budget, that you thought was a key topic.
Yeah. Well, we've already made some cuts for next year, and it was really difficult. And I know that a major issue for you is providing in the schools more programs geared to. I'm not sure you maybe want to explain it more, but
Sure.
like trades. And I'm just concerned with a program like that about the budget. I mean, right now we have a lot of great opportunities for the kids, and we're squeezing them in with the budget. But with additional programs, I'm not sure where in the budget we're going to find it.
Okay. Who's next? I think that was Mr. Dolan, and to be preparing the students for the future.
Right, and I think it ties directly into the budget discussion. I think that we're coming into a year of doing more with less, and needing to be creative, not just with our funds, but with the programs that we're enrolling our students in, and the programs that we have our teachers involved in. I've been in higher ed for, it feels like forever, for over 16 years now, so we face that struggle when enrollment is down, because our enrollment is directly tied to, or I should say our budgets are directly tied to our enrollment. So we face those creativity challenges quite a bit. So I definitely can appreciate the 2 incumbents saying that the budget is their biggest concern, along with whether we're getting the correct number from the state is also, I know, a major concern, and that is still an outstanding issue that we don't know when that figure is going to come in from the state, which is frustrating on all ends. So.
Okay, thank you. Third was Jan, and I think you were talking a little bit about vocational opportunities.
Yes, let me give you a little bit of history about myself. I've been working manufacturing for 23 years. I've had a hard time getting students into vocational trades because they didn't think the jobs were out there, or that they didn't know that there was anybody teaching them. And the sheer truth about this is, yes, budget is a huge concern, but and I am not naive enough to think that this is going to happen overnight. It's going to takes the village to get things working. However, if you look at it from the standpoint that once you get more into the manufacturing trades, and believe you me, manufacturing is hurting so bad right now that there are over 8,000 manufacturers in our state that are looking for people. If we were just to increase machine shop in our vocational schools right now, they would have to increase it 400% just to replace the ones that are retiring. Now, what happens when we have the people that are retiring? We're not going to have anybody working in the manufacturing. So what happens when we don't have any manufacturing? They leave. And where do some cities and states and where do governments get a good portion of their money is manufacturing. And to me, that's why I'm looking at it as a whole. And I want to work with the budget. I have to work with the budget. You have to do that. But at the same time, we need to look at the bigger picture, because right now, 3,500 kids a year in our state alone that are being turned away from the 44 overbooked vocational schools. So that's my objective. And yes, I have looked at the fact that we do need to work within budget constraints, but because manufacturing is hurting so bad, there are corporations and they have made groups that they are working with BP and other trade schools, and what they're doing is they're not waiting to get funding. They're actually starting apprenticeship programs with those vocational schools. So it doesn't automatically take outright budget money. Some companies even donate some equipment that they're not going to be using anymore because they're upgrading. So I want to appreciate the fact that budget should always be the key concern. But at the same time, we need to look at the fact that if we don't have people working in the industry, because you've got to look at it, manufacturing involves everything. This microphone was manufactured, this table was manufactured, your street lights, everything that affects every aspect of our life. And if we don't have those people to fix those things, what do? They move out of the country. They move out of our state. They move out of our town.
Thank you. And Pat, I think you also said
Budget.
Budget.
Our current budget for the 15-16 school year is $65.5 million, and we're hoping to get 80% reimbursement from the state on the regional transportation. If that's the case, then we're going to be very close to what Bridgewater has told us they can afford for the assessment, about an increase of $400,000 over this year's budget. If we don't get that, and right now, what the cuts that were made gives us only 60%. If that happens, then Bridgewater's assessment increase goes up almost over $900,000. And we've been told that Bridgewater cannot afford that. And obviously, if there's a cut in Bridgewater's assessment, there has to be a related cut in Rainham's assessment. So we're going to be looking at a major cut in the budget. So we actually have a budget meeting scheduled for this Thursday night for our budget subcommittee, and we're going to have to take a hard look at that and see, until we find out what we're getting from the state, exactly how we're going to have to cut that budget and where we can make those cuts. And it's very important, I think, that we have people that have some experience on the committee to know where we can make those cuts with the least impact on student services. Obviously, it's going to be very difficult decisions to make. But budget is so important. It affects everything, obviously, within the school. So that would be a primary consideration. I can throw out another issue, too, is school safety, which is a huge issue. We have to provide the best educational program we can, but in a safe and secure environment. And with the situation in our world, unfortunately, safety and security for our students, our schools, is so important. And we have taken some important measures in that direction, and we need to keep working on that.
Thank you. Keith, I think you had something like
I
that?
just want to follow up. Pat brought up, the Bridgewater town and our council. And what I'd like to maybe have you discuss a little bit is the relationship between the school committee and the two leadership boards of each Rainham and Bridgewater, the Board of Selectmen in Rainham and the council. I know that the council met with you early and had recommended a 2.5% increase. The budget that you ended up approving was actually almost a 4% or at least 4% increase. So obviously there's a difference there. So could you just talk a little bit about the relationship that the committee will have with the two leadership groups, and we'll just again continue and just start with Mr. Gelfi.
Well, I'm actually the liaison with the Rainham Board of Selectmen, and I know Jim Ross was at the last budget meeting when we approved the budget. So there's constant contact with that. I mean, they know what we need, what we're asking for, and they tell us what they can afford. I mean, that's it.
Mike, did you?
I think for me, it's sort of sitting back for the first few months and sort of watching how that's played out, specifically in Bridgewater, watching that dynamic. But I would say that it needs to be one of mutual respect. The people of Bridgewater and Rainham are voting for us to sit on the school committee, just as they're voting for our counterparts on the town council and the selectmen in Rainham. So,
Jan, do you have something to?
Well, no, I mean, as Mr. Dolan here was saying, that to sit back and learn, and you have to take in what you can. But even though 3 years seems like a long time, I know it can go by really quick. So you can't sit back the whole time. You have to be a little bit proactive, and maybe sometimes being new on a committee, you give a perspective that people weren't looking at. So that's one thing that I feel I want to be able to do. But at the same time, I've worked with a lot of different groups that really didn't involve me. And again, only because manufacturing is my experience, I've had to deal with different things that I never thought I would have to deal with. So I know that working with the selectmen and the council would probably help me be able to learn a lot quicker than if I was just to do it and just not be in a different committee.
Pat?
If we get that 80% funding for regional transportation, we will be very close to the 2.5% that Bridgewater has said that they can afford. If not, we have to cut. No one on our committee is in favor of an override, for sure. The people in the towns can't afford it. And our philosophy has always been to work well with the communities. It's a partnership. It has to be a partnership. We've never been in favor of decimating highway departments or police departments to fund the school department. We have to work together. So we will be looking at where we can make cuts if we don't get that additional transportation money.
if I
Good.
could ask,
Yep.
Mrs. Wright, do we know when that we'll have that notice from the state?
We're on hold.
We are, okay.
Hopefully soon.
If I can, I like what you said about working with the community, because again, I found out that I was going to be voted in Bridgewater too, so I had to hurry up and do some door knocking in Bridgewater as well. But when I would go door to door to the people and I would explain to them what my hopes are for their children, before I even finished talking, they had a big smile on their face. And that's what I love to do. I want to work with the community because, after all, isn't that what we are? We are representatives of the community. And if we can do that, it's something that I really would like to be a part of.
All right. One other topic there's a couple of the topics that, I've heard from the community that they may want to hear about. So I'll put them out there and see, if these are, how important they are to the four of you. The idea of where we stand with our buildings and facilities. We've got some issues going on in the town of Bridgewater. And secondarily, about curriculum and education. You've got some standardized tests. There's some thoughts about changing in Massachusetts one set of standardized testing to another set. So those are two other issues, the buildings or facilities and, the whole idea of the standardized testing. And didn't know whether anyone had any thoughts or comments on any of that. Somebody.
Well, I do. like I said, I've tried to talk to and get to know some of the teachers and some of the people that are involved with this. One thing that's been upsetting is that from the teacher's standpoint, some friends and parents, is that there's too much testing going on and not enough learning. And from what I remember, Massachusetts used to be the world premiere of education. And we brag about our universities, but I was looking at the U.S. News and World Report today, and not one Massachusetts high school was in the top 25. Now, why? Why did we go from being a state with all these wonderful, schools, and all of a sudden we're not at that level? And there's obviously curriculum that's been introduced in the past few years that is not helping our kids.
Anyone else?
I think one of the challenges is that we have people in Washington and on Beacon Hill making education decisions. They're, with all due respect to them, they are career politicians. They're not educators. They're not in the classrooms. They're not sitting on school committees. They're not superintendents of schools. So I think that the struggle for any school district in the Commonwealth, not just Bridgewater Rainham, is how do we conform to that? How do we work within those parameters?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the Common Core. I think that's what we're kind of talking about here. And it is been formulated by the best educational minds in the country. And it's all about accountability. I mentioned a $65.5 million budget. Our taxpayers deserve to have our schools and our teachers accountable. And that's what the testing does. And if it's good teachers, they shouldn't be just teaching to the test. The test should be aligned with the curriculum, so we're basically teaching the curriculum, and then the testing is just accounting. It'll either show if the teachers are performing the way they should, if we're teaching the students what they should be learning, but it's all about accountability, and I think that's really important. As I said, we spend a lot of money on education. We have to have the proof that it's working. And I'm not sure about the statistics that you quoted. I haven't heard that, Jan, but I know that our standards in Massachusetts are the most rigorous in the country.
Tony, I don't think we've heard from you.
Yeah, as a teacher, I've seen the standards. We implemented them a few years ago in Brockton. We started with math, and we went into ELA, and they are challenging. I teach the third grade, and they're asking our third graders to compare two passages, not just pull details out of one passage. A lot more nonfiction literature, pulling details out of two nonfiction passages and comparing them and contrasting them. It's a lot for a third grader, and the standards get progressively harder as the grades go up. Do I agree with all the standards that they have in there? No, there's a couple things in there that I maybe want to change, but I think they're rigorous. I've seen my students have trouble with them, and they struggle with them, but they're able to do it eventually, for the most part. But I also think that we should have standards across the country, not have this Massachusetts being this island of great schools and other states not matching up. If we want the country to move forward, I think the standards have to be across the country.
I think it's time to wrap.
Yeah.
You also mentioned facilities. Can we
Yes.
jump in on
Good.
that one?
Yeah.
Another
Good.
huge issue, obviously, is our
Yes.
Mitchell Elementary School. And right now, our superintendent has recommended a structural analysis of the school and a feasibility study to see whether it's going to be cost-effective to repair that building, because we're not even just talking about the missing beams and the problem with the roof that partially caved in, but also we've had ongoing problems with mold in that school. So feasibility study to find out whether it's going to be more cost-effective to repair or to rebuild, and that's going to be a huge issue
Just
over
to,
the next 3 years.
just to rebut, I've seen where kids have brought homework where they've been asked to explain how 5 plus 2 equals 10. Then they've been told that you take away the 2 minus 5, you get the 3, add that to 5 plus 2, which 7, which equals 10. How does that make any sense for our kids? Another thing about how these standards, these have not been tested yet, and they've introduced something that there's no empirical evidence to show these have been successful. I'm all for accountability, and we need to hold everybody accountable because, there are children that are out there. But again, let's implement things that actually have been proven to work.
Well, as I said, the Common Core was developed with the best educational minds in the country. What would you replace it with, Jan?
Those were not educators.
Yes,
They were psychologists.
No, I believe they were educational.
They were psychologists, but we're low on time. But no, seriously, it's not about who implemented them. It's about what's implemented.
Our superintendent says our Common Core is about basic common sense, and if there's anything in there that isn't, we will eliminate it. So if somebody brings something to her attention, she has said, that doesn't seem right, she'll go back and ask the teachers, is this the case? And if it's something that doesn't make sense, then, we just will eliminate it from our curriculum.
And I understand that, and myself being as a Romanian immigrant that has fought a lot of things shoved upon us, and all of a sudden we're seeing other kids that are bringing home their homework where they're teaching them about Islam. Now, wait a minute, if we can't teach our kids about Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism, why are we all of a sudden pushing Islam in our schools?
Is that in Bridgewater, Rainham?
No, I don't believe it is, but
I think we need
but
to focus on
started.
Bridgewater, Rainham.
No, I understand that. I understand.
If I could just respond, too, to something you mentioned about vocational. I think you make a great argument, Jan, for probably increasing our vocational schools. Our vocational schools, Bristol, Plymouth, Bristol Agricultural, do a wonderful job. And perhaps it is true that they should be expanded. I don't think we should turn our high school into a trade school. We have introduced many more career-oriented programs at the high school, many computer science programs, forensics, lots of great science classes, meteorology, a lot of great programs that are career-oriented. We also have the highest advanced placement program in the state as far as we have our students can take courses at Bridgewater Rainham, at Bridgewater State University and Massasoit while they're at the high school to also follow up on other career opportunities.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all. As we're beginning to wrap up, I just want to re-highlight there are two individuals running for the 2 seats in Bridgewater, Jason Hammond and Michael Dolan, who was here this evening. And there are 3 individuals running for the 2 seats in Rainham. Again, in Bridgewater, we will elect representatives from both. Tony Gelfi, who's a candidate for re-election, Pat Riley, a candidate for re-election, and Jan Baliano,
Yes.
running. So that's the 3rd individual. Now if we can quickly just get to a closing, and again, we drew an order there where, Michael, I think you were the first to draw on the close.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to do this tonight, and thank you to the candidates from Rainham as well. Again, my name is Mike Dolan. We have the distinct privilege of putting our children first on this committee, and that is one thing that we should never forget. No matter who's elected, our kids are our first priority, and that's something that we all need to remember. So,
Okay, thank you. And second, I think, is Pat Riley.
Thank you, and again, thank you for the opportunity. I'm running for re-election because I care. I care about our Bridgewater Rainham community. I care about our towns of Bridgewater and Rainham. I care about the district, and I care about our children and our young adults in Bridgewater and Rainham. And because I've dedicated my life to doing whatever I can to try to make the world a better place. I think my experience, particularly my involvement with the RAVE organization, providing volunteers in programs in the schools for the past 18 years, and my 9 years on the school committee, provide me with the tools to help keep the district moving in the right direction and always trying to continuously improve. Obviously, I serve at the will of the voters. I would ask for your consideration, and thank you so much for giving me the honor to serve as one of your school committee members.
Thank you. Next is Jan.
Well, I want to thank you, Joseph Gillis and Keith Buell. I want to thank you for having me. I want to thank you for the panel here. It's nice to finally meet you guys. I wanted to be on the committee for, obviously, for bringing that in. As a former teacher, I used to teach vocational at a private junior college, And one thing that I learned as a teacher is that every student learns differently. You have to teach them differently. Now, if we are pushing our kids into college that don't know how to use analytical things given to them, but they're really good with their hands, what are we doing to them? We're sending them into and giving them $100,000 debt or whatever it is, and we can't do that. We need to teach to the children, because we are on this, like Mike Dolan said here, we are here for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tony?
Thank you, gentlemen and lady and gentlemen, and residents out there watching. Again, I'm Tony Gelfi, and I'm running for re-election to the school committee. I have a bachelor's degree in management and a master's degree in education. I hold 3 educator licenses: elementary education, instructional technology, and administration. I've served on the school committee for 3 years, and for the past year I've served on the budget subcommittee and as a liaison to the Rainham Board of Selectmen. I think my experiences make me uniquely qualified to help a team guide the district through the coming budget challenges. It's been a privilege. It really has been a privilege to represent the residents of Bridgewater and Rainham and to work with the great school committee people, current and past. And I hope I can continue that in the future. Thanks.
The one thing I'll add before Joe wraps it up is really we should be thanking you. You shouldn't be thanking us. All residents, both of Rainham and Bridgewater, should thank all 4 of you for stepping up. It's been a problem having people step up. And so anyone who chooses to put themselves out there for whatever reason deserves a big thank you from the citizens of both towns. So for all of them, I'll speak for them. Thank you all for running.
Pleasure.
And I'd like to thank the 4 of you. And for our TV audience, we are going to take a brief break for a couple of moments while we bring in our next group of panelists, the candidates for the Bridgewater Library Trustees. Excuse me, I was like, when are we going next? Bridgewater Library Trustees. So we'll take a brief recess, and be back in a couple moments with the Bridgewater Library Trustees. Thank you.
Since 1899, the VFW has been there for our veterans, their families, and their communities. The VFW has been instrumental in establishing the Veterans Administration, creating a GI Bill for the 20th century, establishing a cemetery system, and fighting for better compensation and better services for those who have served their country. Bridgewater's VFW Post 2125, located at 40 Orange Street, is there for our local veterans, offering resources and support. The Bridgewater VFW is also active in the community, sponsoring clothing drives, Toys for Tots, Buddy Poppies, and the Young Marines. Post 2125 is seeking new members and supporters to keep the mission going. If you are a veteran or if you'd like to help veterans, please contact your local VFW at 508-697-4151 or visit them online at vfw2125.org.